Hello, I'm Carl Seibert. Thanks for joining me. Recently, Google announced support for 3 copyright-related IPTC metadata fields in Google Images. That makes this a great time to go over the procedure for marking up your pictures with metadata. For this video, we're in Lightroom Classic. Now, the first step in any metadata application project is to start with a template. Very important to use a template. Don't try to type this stuff in over and over again because you will go completely straight out of your mind, and nobody is that consistent a typist. Human beings just aren't wired that way. So here we are in Lightroom, and we're looking at a template file that I downloaded from my own website. And these files are available in the description down below. The way Lightroom works, you can't directly import metadata. So all this template file is a JPEG photo, and it has metadata attached to it. Now, the template contains standing metadata, stuff that we don't change from photo to photo. And this is interesting because the fields that Google is now supporting are, in fact, standing metadata. You'll very rarely change them, so they'll be in your template. Applying those fields, and a bunch of other ones actually too, won't take any effort at all. But before we get going, we have to make our template. So here we have the template from my website, and it's loaded with placeholder information. Joe Photographer, our favorite imaginary photographer, is the owner of this template. And we have all of Joe's contact information. We have Joe's byline sitting here in the caption field already waiting for us. And we have the places where Joe may have shot the photo. And we have a bunch of copyright information from Joe. So we'll go in our IPTC section of our metadata sidebar in Lightroom, and we'll go to Edit Presets. Templates in Lightroom are presets, and here we have the Edit Presets dialog. Now, this dialog is actually really powerful. Let's take a look at what we have here. Here we have the caption field, and you'll remember that elsewhere in the interface, it was labeled the description. That's an oops. It's the same field. And in our caption field, we have Joe Photographer's byline already waiting for us. And what we're going to do to make this preset our own is we are simply going to replace all the references to Joe Photographer with appropriate information for us. And we have tick boxes over here. We can turn this information on or off in the template. If we turn it off, it won't overwrite anything that already exists on our photo. That's pretty cool, and it'll be useful later. And as you can see, we have whole sections that we just turn off because there's nothing in them. And we go through the template, and you'll change all this information to make it your own, and then you'll save out a new template by using the Save Current Settings as New Preset command. We'll go ahead and do this because we're not going to actually edit our starter template. We're just going to go right ahead and pretend that we're Joe and use the thing as is. So we'll save out our template as a new preset, and we'll call it AA Demo Preset. And what was I saying about typing? Yeah, I can't type a small word without making a typo. And let's take a look at what we've got here. So we have our contact information. We have our byline already sitting at the back end of our caption, waiting for the rest of our caption. And here we have some copyright information. Here is the copyright notice. Now, the 3 fields that Google is supporting are the creator field, the credit field, and the copyright field. As of today, creator and credit are supported in Google Images. Copyright is coming in the coming weeks, as Google puts it. So let's take a look at those fields individually and see what they are. The creator is pretty simple. It's the photographer's name. On rare occasions, it might be a company or something like that, but 99% of the time, it's just your name. The copyright notice is also pretty simple. Now, copyright notices have basically three parts. They have the word copyright or the copyright symbol, and the placeholders in this starter template include both. The year of first publication of the picture or the year of its creation. Usually it's the same thing, nothing to worry about. The name of the copyright holder. 99% of the time, it's the photographer who shot the picture. Now, one of the purposes of a copyright notice, and the Copyright Office will tell you this in their documentation, is to help honest would-be users of the photo get in touch with the copyright owner. And in this particular case, particularly if we're thinking ahead to somebody finding this picture in Google Images, that is a really important thing. So Joe here has included some very brief contact information right in his copyright notice. He's included his phone number. Could be a URL, could be an email address, it could be something else. I think that is a really good idea. And it's not going to hurt your copyright notice. For one thing, copyright notices at all are optional since about 1989. And the form of them is also completely optional. As long as you communicate what you need to communicate, you should be good to go. Some people, in addition to the basic three fields in their copyright notice, add a rights statement instead of, or maybe in addition to, that contact information. Frankly, there's a perfectly fine place for a rights statement. All rights reserved. That's a rights statement. In the metadata elsewhere, here we see it in the rights usage terms. But, on the other hand, that field is not going to be exposed directly in Google Images, so you might want to put that information right in your copyright notice. Now, if you're releasing a picture under Creative Commons, it becomes a really good idea because your rights statement is your statement of Creative Commons license. And all a person needs to legally use a Creative Commons picture, to credit it properly, is the name of the creator and the Creative Commons license. And, indeed, contact information should also be provided. It's part of the Creative Commons license to provide, if possible, a link back to the original copy of the photograph. Now, those fields in Lightroom are in the IPTC copyright stanza of the template. Well, where's the credit field? The credit field is down here in the IPTC status stanza of this template. And that matters to us, actually. We'll see why in the end. It's a Lightroom thing. It's just a little bit quirky. But for the moment, this is where we find it. Here it is. It's the credit field. Now, Google calls it credit. The IPTC at the moment calls it credit line. And it's previously been called the provider field. And this is the most confusing field, probably, of all of them. I have many, many times over the last 15 years explained the usage of this field to many people, developers, designers, photographers, all kinds of people. And it's never been really simple. So here goes. The credit field contains the name of the organization that is responsible for the photo, for its distribution, or its publication, or perhaps its creation. A real-life example tends to bring that in focus. Joe Radel is a Getty Images staff photographer. And if you've ever seen his credit line on a Getty Images picture on a publication website, you'll see that it's Joe Radel / Getty Images. Now, Joe Radel's name goes in the creator field, where we have placeholder for Joe Photographer. And Getty Images goes in the credit line field. He works for Getty Images. Getty Images is responsible for the picture. Now, the organization named in the credit line field does not necessarily own the copyright to the picture, but it might. If you're looking to use a picture, at the very least, it's a good place to start. Now, our imaginary photographer Joe has an imaginary sister named Susie, and the two of them together have a studio. So here in the credit line, we have Susie and Joe Studio. So that would concatenate together to make a byline that said Joe Photographer, Susie and Joe Studio. Okay, so far, so good. Now, if you're an independent photographer and you're not working for anybody, there's no client involved, you're not using Creative Commons or some special license or anything like that, it's pretty simple. You can just put your name in this field and be done with it. On the other hand, if you do have a client or an organization that you work for, it can get a little more complicated because over the years, all the people who've been confused by the credit line field have done different things with it. And one popular thing to do is to put the entire string that you might want as your credit line in the credit line field. In other words, in this case, Joe Photographer / Susie and Joe Studio. Now, that makes me crazy from a data management point of view because you're now putting two different data points in the same field, and no good can come of that. But it remains to be seen how Google users are going to interpret this field. And basically, the crux of it is, my sensibilities notwithstanding, however it evolves that Google users expect to use this field is what we should do in the field. And right now, we don't know. Should we go ahead and make it be the complete credit, both name and organization? Or should we do it the way it's supposed to be done and see what happens? Well, I don't know. We'll just have to see. For the moment, put your name in there and we should be good to go. The rest of our template is pretty straightforward stuff. Here, we have contact information for Joe. We have his physical address. We have his phone number, and you can include more than one. We have his email, same deal, you can include more than one. And we have his website. Many photographers dutifully fill out every single one of these fields. Some do not. I, for instance, don't put my physical address on my pictures, and I don't put my email address on my pictures either. I use my business phone number and my website. Your mileage may vary. Do it however you want, but basically, make sure when you're doing your template that you have all that stuff correct, because you're probably never going to look at it again, and you don't want to. You don't want to worry about it. You want to be able to just apply it and go. And as you can see in these fields in the template, in my own template, I do, in fact, fill in the state and the country code, because that's where I am most of the time. If I go out of state or out of the country, I change those codes. Now, this is the location where the image was shot. This is not the location where you live. In the starter template, I filled in these fields. You might just want to delete that copy out of there, or you might want to change it for your own needs. In any case, now we have a template, so now we can go ahead and we can do some metadata work. In Lightroom, you import pictures. Lightroom is database driven. It's not a files and folders sort of product like Photo Mechanic is. In Lightroom, your pictures are all referenced in a database, and Lightroom is a non-destructive editor. So all your edits that you do to your pictures, all your toning and retouching and all of those sorts of things are in the database, and the original picture is never touched. Thus, it's non-destructive. When you want to make a useful photo, you export from all that information, and it creates an output photo to your specifications. So, here we go. The first step in bringing pictures into Lightroom is to import them. And we will assume here that we're importing from a camera memory card. And we've navigated in the import dialog to our camera memory card. And we have a folder full of demo images to work with. Now, in the right rail of our import dialog, we have things to apply during import. Now, we could apply develop settings if we wanted to. I don't know why we would. It's not something I've ever done, but hey, it's possible. but we can apply some metadata. We simply choose our metadata preset. In this particular case, it's something that we just got done making, but it's probably something that you've had for a while, and you may have several presets for several different circumstances. That's perfectly fine. And let's navigate to where we're going to go with these photos, and there we go. There's the folder I want to put them in, and we'll just hit the button and import. Now, once imported into Lightroom, you can't be moving these photos around using the operating system or anything like that. You have to use Lightroom for all your operations with these photos, or else you'll break the link between the database and the photos. So here we are in Library View in our Lightroom catalog, and we're looking at these photos that we just imported. And we'll get rid of that side rail. Hello, go away. We'll get rid of that side rail so it's not quite as cramped. We've shrunk the Lightroom interface down to fit the frame of my video capture tool. But we can take a look at these photos and we can see that each and every one of them has all of our template data applied. Now, as far as Google is concerned, we've done the thing here. We've done ourselves a solid for Google already, and we really essentially haven't lifted a finger. It just happened on import when we applied our preset. Now, applying your preset on import is not the only way to do it in Lightroom. Let's say that we've imported our photos without applying a metadata preset to them, and we want to go ahead and do that. So here they are. These photos are in the catalog. It's the same photos, but I've stripped all the metadata off them. All we have to do is select them, choose our preset, say yes, and bang, there we are. All these photos now have our metadata preset applied to them. And wait, there's yet more ways to do this. We can use the spray tool, the painter tool, I guess, in Lightroom parlance, and we can choose in its flyout menu to apply metadata with it, and we can choose the metadata preset that we want to apply, and we can merrily go along our way, spraying metadata on photos as we go. And we'll say we're done there, and there we are. Here we have sprayed our template on all these photos. So now we have all of our standing metadata applied, and that's half the battle. We've got Google taken care of, but we have more important work to do. So let's go to this photo here, for example. We need a caption for our photo. Part of the power of photos is that they're specific. They're about specific things. So for our own purposes and the purposes of everybody else, we really need to write down specifically what's in this particular photo. So we will come over here to our description field in the right rail in Lightroom, and we will find that it's not very inviting. It's a little bitty one-row field. So if we go back to the View selector in our metadata pane, we can choose Large Caption. There we go. Now we have something big enough that we can write a caption in. And as you can see, Joe Photographer's credit line or byline is already here in our caption. And that's an important thing. Worst case, you should put something in your caption. Your name would be a good starter. Or maybe some boilerplate text about contact you if you're interested in the photo. Something like that. The caption may be, in fact, the only piece of metadata that many users will ever see. Now, Google isn't supporting it yet. They're not reading our captions that we know of yet, and they're certainly not displaying them in Google Images. But everywhere else, the caption might be the only piece of metadata that is seen by anybody, and we have to make it count. And by having some text in the caption, no matter what it is, it should be something useful, but no matter what it is, in the case that you forget to caption a photo or one just slips by or whatever, at least a user will know that there's metadata in the photo, and they can look around and find your contact information or whatever. So let's write a caption for this photo. Okay, and we'll clean up a couple of typos. As you can see, Lightroom does not have a spell check. That's pretty dangerous for me. But now we have a caption for this specific picture. And it tells us that we're in Jones Record Store and it's about records. And here we have in the caption a second sentence that's context. It tells us really the reason why we're probably looking at the picture. Widget Co., our favorite imaginary company, is expanding into the music business and they're buying up record stores, which is probably lamentable, but whatever. So what if we want, say, this part of this caption to be used in a number of these pictures? Well, one thing that we could do is we could use the operating system and we can cut and paste. But hey, there's a better way. So let's see what we can do in Lightroom to make this happen. And now we'll find a couple more pictures that have to do with record stores, and we'll get a head start on their captions. So we'll select this one and that one as well. So now we'll press the Sync button, and that will bring up the Synchronize Metadata dialog. The Synchronize Metadata dialog in Lightroom looks really a lot like our preset dialog. We can see here now the caption that we wrote on this picture, and we have the same tick boxes that we have in the preset dialog. So let's turn all the tick boxes off. And what that will do for us is that will tell Synchronize to skip over all these turned off fields and not disturb anything that's already in those fields. Now, with all of our other tick boxes turned off and only the caption field active, we'll go ahead and we'll synchronize the caption on these three pictures. Now, all three pictures have the same caption. Now, if you'll remember, this photo has the caption which includes that first sentence that we wanted to keep. We want to get rid of it on these other two. And this would probably be something that we would do for more than just two photos. But here, we'll select the remaining two photos. We'll hit the Sync button again. And this time, we'll go back into our caption in the annoying little one-row dialog. And we will delete that first sentence and hit the Synchronize button again. Now, here we go. We have the bottom part of our caption, the sentence of context about Widget Co., and we have Joe's credit line. So now we'll make sure that only one photo is selected, and we'll go back to our caption, and we will write the first sentence specifically for this particular picture. There we go. And now we can move on and do the same for our other pictures. So we can go through a big batch of pictures like this in waves and caption them and get them ready with as little duplicative work as possible. Now, what about keywords? Keywords are interesting. Captions are required. Keywords are optional in most cases. The caption is the thing that specifically defines a photo, that gives it its specific meaning. And it's the thing that people years and years from now will look for in a photo. And in the broader world, if we publish the photo, that's where folks are going to look. Keywords are search terms that maybe we didn't get in the caption that we're going to add to our metadata to help us find the pictures later. And keywords are specific to our needs and our system and our method of doing digital management. There is a lot on keywording on this channel and on my blog. There's a lot of things to consider to make your keywording plan. And then there's some information on actually applying keywords in your software. But we'll just apply a couple or three keywords to some of these pictures, and we'll use the same technique that we used before. We have three musical instruments here. so we'll just select them. If you select multiple pictures at the same time in Lightroom Classic, you can just go ahead and apply metadata to them at the same time. And so we'll go ahead and we'll apply a keyword to all three of these pictures. We'll say that they're instruments and a comma space, because that's how keywords are separated. And we'll press the button. So now we've applied that keyword to those three pictures. Now, keywords can be synchronized, and keywords can be applied in different ways in Lightroom. Notably, we have a keyword set, which basically can contain 9 keywords. And we can bring up any keyword set that we want from this little pick list here. And we can select some pictures. And in this case, we have a keyword set that goes with the record store scenario. And I'll just click on music, retail, and phonograph. And we've applied those keywords to those photos. Now, keywords are generally applied in batches, and you could do them in their own pass through your photos. You could do them while you're moving bits of captions around in your photos, or you could even put them in your preset in the first place. If you know, for instance, that you're photographing a record store and you photograph record stores all the time, you might have a preset pre-made with a bunch of record store keywords in them. And yes, sync in Lightroom works with keywords, and we'll do that the same way. We'll bring up the Synchronize Metadata dialog. We'll check none. And we will come down here and turn keywords on and synchronize. Bang. Now it will synchronize those keywords between those two photos. Now, in Adobe Lightroom, we have a couple more steps before we can go away. So we've applied captions and keywords and copyright metadata and all sorts of good metadata to these photos in this folder. Before we go, we need to select all these photos. Go to Metadata in the main menu and say Save Metadata to Files, and go ahead and acknowledge the warning. Now we've actually written this metadata to these files. And if we've developed some of these photos in Lightroom as well, we're writing develop metadata to the photos also. Not every little scrap of developed metadata, but we have at least written the settings for the current version of the photo as we see it. That's really important if we lose our Lightroom catalog file for some reason, because the catalog file contains the database, and the database contains all the work that you have put into your pictures. Not just metadata, but all your develop work as well. So it's a really good idea to embed all that stuff into the files themselves. And this also means that if you take these files outside of Lightroom and just copy them someplace and use them, they will have industry standard metadata embedded in them. But in Lightroom's environment, to do anything useful with these photos, we have to export them. So we'll select a couple of photos, and we will go to our Export dialog. And here it says that we're going to export 3 photos. And we have all sorts of settings that we can apply to these photos as far as the file, the format, the size, the name, all of these sorts of things. Important for our discussion here is metadata. Now, if we have assigned any sort of file settings to these photos, the Add Metadata dialog, or the Add Metadata portion of our dialog, will become active. By default, it's going to say All Metadata, and that is probably indeed what you want to do. There are 3 tick boxes here, by the way: Remove Person Info, Remove Location Info. Those refer to artificial intelligence functions. It will attempt to identify people by recognizing their faces, and it will also resolve GPS data into street addresses. And it will save that information in special Lightroom fields in the metadata. So if you use those functions, fine. If you don't, just make sure that those tick boxes are cleared. And write keywords as Lightroom hierarchy would, if ticked, write a field of special keywords that will remain hierarchical, if that's the way you do your keywords, and allow those keywords to be edited as hierarchical keywords later. Generally speaking, especially if you're going to use programs other than Lightroom with your keywords later, I would leave that unticked. And in the big include flyout, we have several choices. But remember in the preset when we looked at which stanza or which section our Google metadata was in? That has invalidated most of these choices. Copyright only will not get us all of the 3 fields that we need for Google. Copyright and contact info only, same deal. And this assumes that you want to get rid of your caption, and I can't for the life of me imagine any circumstance where you would want to not have a caption. Include all metadata except camera raw info could save some space in the output file, and in this particular case, this output file is going to be a JPEG. It needs camera raw info like it needs a hole in the head, so that is a possibility. All except camera and camera raw info will get rid of most of your EXIF data as well. And by this time in a photo's life cycle, EXIF data is pretty useless. For the most part, however, we just want to make sure that this is set on all metadata. And we might want to take a glance before we export, or set this in our export preset. If we make a mistake, it's not exactly fatal. All we have to do is re-export the pictures. And then we just hit the export button, and the pictures will be exported to wherever we specified. So there you have it. Not too much work, not any work at all to put your copyright information, the information that Google is interested in, on your pictures. And in Lightroom, we've got a pretty good interface, and apart from not having a spell check for sloppy typists like me, it's pretty easy to write your captions. And as we can see, we can go in waves and we can move captions in parts along to different pictures and save ourselves some effort. And we can spray and we can synchronize. We can do all of those kinds of good Lightroom things. So once again, thanks for joining me. Be sure to look in the description down below. There's a link to the starter templates that we used here, and there are links to relevant blog posts as well. Reach out in the comments or on social media. Let us know what you think about this new Google development, or ask any questions that you want about applying metadata to pictures. Explore the rest of the channel. There are detailed how-tos on all sorts of subjects, and you can go to the blog itself and you can use the search function and find out a lot more about metadata there. Until next time, mind your metadata.